Hey everybody, this is Mick Lebinskas from Climate Salad, and as you all know, my favorite thing is talking to people who are building wildly ambitious climate solutions. And one of the companies we've been working with over the last couple of years is BioCarbon. John from BioCarbon's here is going to tell us a bit about it. John, how you going?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Let's start. Just give us the elevator pitch to give people an idea of what you're working on.
Sure. So what we've done is developed a pyrolysis process, which basically takes woody wastes and turns them into charcoal. Then we've taken that charcoal and turned it into a product we can use in steel making. So we're basically replacing coal in steel making, which obviously has a large net zero benefit.
Yeah, fantastic. So really want to get into understanding, like in terms of steel making, it's one of those ones, you've kind of got put solar panels on your roof in terms of very simple things you could that most people can do, by making a decision. And then you've got, I think, obviously there's sustainable aviation fuel. There's a couple of really big ones, but environmentally friendly steel, it's still massively used by the world and massively challenged. Can you tell us a bit about the problem? I mean, without going into the full
Yeah,
details,
well,
but yeah.
the problem is big. So the world produces about 2 billion tons of steel every year. That accounts for somewhere between 7 and 9% of the global CO2 equivalent. So that's a pretty big country if you think of it in those terms. So it certainly needs solving. Steel is made by basically two routes, one from iron ore and the other from scrap. Scrap making steel from scrap in electric arc furnace is a lot greener because you can use green electricity to produce that steel. But the sort of last mile there is that they use a little bit of what they call coke, which is made from coal, in the arc furnace to produce the steel. And that's the coke we're replacing because it has a high value and we can do it at the cost comparable, basically. So we don't rely on carbon credits or anything like that. We're cost comparable with the coke that they're using in the electric arc furnace.
One of the big things that we've, I think, all realized over the last few years is that hoping the world makes a environmentally better decision just for being nice is not going to cut it. You need to make a better product, or at least a product on parity. Can you tell in terms of the other big question is scale. So love to know a little bit of the history and heading towards, how do we actually get this to scale?
Yeah, scale is a big question in the steel business. So talking about the iron ore route, they use about 700 kilos of coal to make a ton of steel. In the electric arc furnace route where we're going, you use only about 20 kilos of coal to make a ton of steel. Why that's important is we, at this early stage, it's very difficult to get to the blast furnace side of things and replace all that coal because just the volumes are out of this world. And the biomass required to do that would be absolutely enormous. So we're taking our first steps in the electric arc furnace, um, which uses less coke to start with, and the scales match nicely. In terms of us getting to scale, that's one of the key differences about our pyrolysis technology is that we can scale. A lot of pyrolysis technologies kind of top out at 4,000 or 10,000 tons of input. Um, we think we'll be able to do much larger than that. Our technology is based on some pretty old and robust furnace technology. We just do things a little differently. So getting to scale shouldn't be a problem. What we're focused on at the moment is a new plant which will take 20,000 tonnes a year of wood chip and will produce about 8,000 tonnes a year of our coke product. We call it green char carbon. So that'll be the first plant at scale, and we're fully funded for that. And we should have that up and running in about 18 months' time, or let's say middle of 2026.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, some really great progress. Obviously, it's a lot more to do. can you tell me about the dynamics between the the feedstock, so the kind of that as waste, and then and getting that right and scaling it, and then actually the operations? Is this like is there one massive operation at Newcastle that produces all of this and you ship it around the world, or yeah, how do the logistics work? Is it sort of modular, mid-scale operations everywhere? Um, and yeah, let's start with that.
That's a really good question. So there are places in the world that have large volumes of sort of woody wastes. Let's you sort of think North America or Northern Europe, where they're processing quite a lot of timber. When I say Northern Europe, I mean sort of Scandinavia, maybe Russia, and even in Australia. So you think about Tasmania, Bell Bay, or the Green Triangle down between South Australia and Victoria, there, where they do generate a lot of wood chip. The issue there is that it has a value because of its scale. So they're producing enough wood chip to feed into the paper making process. And we all kind of think, oh, we don't use so much paper anymore, so why is that must be a dying industry. We use less paper, but we're using more cardboard for all the packages we're buying from Amazon and so on. So that scale of production is still holding firm, and their prices are holding there too. Then you've got players that are smaller than that who are producing kind of high value timber products. So we're located on a sawmill in the mid north coast of New South Wales, which produces floorboards out of Aussie hardwoods, and they produce about 20,000 tonnes a year. And then they've got another place down the road which produces about another 20,000. They struggle to get any value for that wood chip because it's not enough to build a port, and and they're too far away to sort of truck it to a port. So they get almost a sort of zero value for it. But they do need to move it on. They can't just let it pile up. The EPA don't like that, which is fair enough. It leaks tannins into the water and sorts of other issues. But yeah, so you've got a there certainly are places with large volumes, and then when you back off that, there are smaller volumes, and I think you're going to we're going to be in that sort of area where you're using those medium-sized producers of chip to feed our machines.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's such a I always talk to people about yeah, sometimes they're like, well, you're taking this natural product and then you're doing something else with it. Like, is that a waste of that natural product? And you're like, well, it was kind of a waste in the first place. And obviously that wood chip of that Australian timbers thing is a good example. And there's just like endless tons of waste, right? Like I think we underestimate that
Yeah,
sometimes how big that is. But I think the other thing is about supply chains, right? Which is obviously coal is so well established and in all respects that it's just fairly fluid to be able to dig it up somewhere, process it, send it around the world, use it, and burn it. And we've got to get across dozens of industries to get the same kind of efficiency. So you can't expect that perfect efficiency and perfect systems just yet. But it's not an excuse not to take that first step. But
yeah.
but amongst that messy system, like what do you think is some of the key steps that are coming up?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned like us replacing coal. The coal industry is absolutely massive and has a legacy of huge infrastructure that's just sitting there at its beck and call. You talk about railways and ports, um, just all the gear that goes into producing coal. I wake up in the mornings and think, how the hell are we managing to meet that price? But we are. Um, And I think primarily it's because there are quite a few steps in the value chain of coal. That digging something out of the ground ain't necessarily cheap. But when you take a waste product like ours and convert it and add a bit of value to it, it's not so hard, I guess. Did that answer your question? I might have
Yeah.
straight off.
No, well, I'm curious about that. Like, is it an exact like for like? Is it yeah, what parts of the whole supply chain would have to change? Let's say 10 years from now, it's what's a massive goal for 10 years from now in terms of coal replacement for biochar?
biocarbon.
Biocarbon.
Yeah, so the world, co- the amount of coke that's produced around the world is probably about 1 billion tons. Now, 90% of that goes into the blast furnace, which we might be able to replace a little bit of, but it's also produced in house, and they use fairly low value coal, so that'll be a sort of difficult um, price to match. But with carbon prices, that might be okay. But then there's the last 10%, which is coke, which is produced for various processes like electric arc furnace steelmaking. Now you're talking about 100 million tons of coke there. If we can get, in 10 years' time, if we can have 5% of that, or wilder streams 10% of that,
Yeah.
that's a hell of a lot of um,
Yeah.
wood chip we're processing, and that's a lot of plants that we've got running,
Yeah.
and it will be, a very profitable business.
Yeah. And what has to change in the supply chains or logistics to make that work? Is it a like for like? Is it just instead of
Oh, it
putting
is like for like.
coal in this turn?
Yep. Essentially, it's a like for like. The trials we've done with the steelwork. So we've made about 2,700 tons of steel in a couple of arc furnaces, and they didn't have to change anything during those trials, and essentially didn't see too much that they needed to worry about. There'll be some tweaks that we do as we when we build this new plant, and we kind of optimize the process to get the sort of highest value in use. But no, we've got a product right now that works, and there really won't need to be any great changes to the way the steelmakers operate.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that's critical, right? I think it's there are some things that looking at hydrogen, it's just such a massive change to so many systems. It's probably one of the biggest inhibitors. And in terms of industrial decarbonisation, it has been previously touted as one of the big solutions. But I think with battery technology progressing so fast, it's kind of like, well, is it going to be needed at the low end? And with companies like biocarbon really solving more an industry level problem. I think hydrogen will play a role, but like that's a massive advantage, right? To be able to just come into the supply chain and to be fairly small modification for change.
Yeah, we different users want different things from their Coke, and we can adjust what we do because it's a manufactured product, right? So if you want it to have a higher hot strength, or more fixed carbon, or more volatile matter, we can massage within reason to achieve those aims. So we can. It's a bit of a mindset shift for the Coke users when we say, oh, like, what do you want it to do? And they say, well, we want it to be like Coke. And we say, okay, we can make it like Coke, but is there anything about Coke you really like? Is there anything in your Coke that you really want more of? And we
Yeah.
can start to tailor things to to deliver what they want, and deliver them a higher value in use, which is at the day what it's all about. Our chemistry of our product is better than Coke. It should be noted. So Coke is made from coal, obviously, and it has quite a high ash content. You're talking about 12, 14%. Our product is more like about 4 or 5%. And you think, oh, a bit of ash, that doesn't really matter, but you pay for it when you buy it, you pay for it when you transport it, you pay for it when you heat it in the pot, and you pay for it to get it out of the steel. So it
Right.
actually has quite a price. So we can do these things because it's a manufactured product. We can start to massage things within reason to deliver those sort of greater values for the customer.
Yeah, I think that's gets really interesting, right? Is there's replacement with something that's slightly better or maybe even less worse, and then there is it really struck me when I was speaking to the founders of Vow Foods when they weren't trying to create a carbon or a environmentally friendly version of chicken. They were trying to create whole new foods, and I think it's a really great question to be asking. Is like just because you've been using this for a long period of time and it's working, And I guess a lot of the industry doesn't care, right? They're not motivated to go and make something better. But you know, what do they like about Coke? But also, what sucks? Like, what is really painful about it, and what is terrible? What if you could start from if you could start again? Like, what would you change? Um,
Yeah.
and that's part of this opportunity with climate tech and innovation is to not just to get to zero, is to actually make significantly better products. And I think it's a huge part of the value equation, which I think we're underestimating. If you think about the parallels to other technologies like the internet or computers or phones, like if we can get the same 100x improvement over a 20-year period, and be environmentally positive, then I think we can do incredible things. I think it's yeah, how are people responding to that question? Are they interested and open to it, or are they like just match it? Is that where's their mindset at now?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I hate the word journey when it's misused, as I'm about to use it, but it is a journey with these guys. So you walk in the door and say, I can replace your Coke with a a net zero product, and they go, great, let's do that. And then you start talking about, okay, what are your specifications for Coke? And they hand over the specification that everyone else has given you. And then we start saying, oh yeah, how about this or how about that? And they start their mind starts to shift, and they start to have a bit of a fresh look at their processes, and yeah, that conversation starts to open up. But these guys in steel are, they're running a process, and they they get paid to punch out as many tons as they possibly can as cheaply as they can, and that's good because we all buy steel in our houses and cars and everything else, so we want them doing that. But yeah, they it's great to watch them kind of re-look at things, and they do, and they are like, these guys aren't stupid. They
Yeah.
they they cop them pretty quick.
Yeah, wow. And what about markets around the world? I know we're in a bit of a turmoil at the moment, particularly to well, every day really. But well, we're obviously Australia does plays a lot in this space in terms of both coke and steel. But for a company like BioCarbon, like what's your go global path?
Well, we we have got lots of projects sort of teed up here. Once we get this first cab off the rank, there's also plenty of people overseas who are interested. Europe's uh, Europe's very interested. They've got a pretty high carbon price, and the CBAM is making is kind of putting a wall around their steel making there. So yeah, they're keen. We haven't really tested out the American market yet, but they produce 70% of their steel in electric arc furnaces, so it's going to be a big place for us. The Chinese we've talked to. I've been to a green steel conference there and had a talk at that. Yeah, had presented at that. So yeah, there's a lot of interest everywhere.
And yeah, like it's interesting the regulation side. Do you feel like that's going to get even better as you keep improving the product? Like, or is that like do you feel regulation's going to be an ally over the next few years, or
Well, regulation's interesting. So um, for us, thermally treating a waste, uh, the the EPA in New South Wales particularly is um, very cautious about that, and so we had to sort of tread very carefully and make sure we
yeah,
dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. But I think once they see the plant in operation and we can start sort of showing them things, showing the emissions or the lack of emissions, um, I think regulation will sort of start to sort of melt away because the positive story that's there that you're replacing coke, which is a pretty hardcore product. You take coal, you heat it in these dirty big coke ovens, and it's not nice. Yeah, our process will, I think, will the benefits will become far more apparent, and we'll start to that regulation problem will start to sort of fade away to some
yeah.
extent. I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow. I keep telling people, no one in the EPA gets a pat on the back for taking a risk, and that's fair enough. It's not
Yeah.
what we want them to do, but um, it's going to be a long process, and look, around the world, I think they'll, in that regard, they'll probably be the same. They'll all be fairly similar. We talk, maybe in some of the developing countries it'll be a bit easier because um, their regulations aren't as developed. But
Yeah.
I think you know, if, New South Wales is a pretty hard nut to crack. Let's be honest. Like
Yeah.
it's up there in terms of um, regulation on any other ends. I mean, in terms of coke, in terms of using the product, there really aren't any that are jumping out at us that are scary because it's a better result at the end of the day.
Yeah. And are you looking at any partnerships with any of the big companies in this industry?
Yeah, we are. I can't say too much at the moment, but one of the steelmakers is in a joint venture with us, and we are very confident of receiving funding from a government department, um, some grant funding. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're in
Right.
negotiations with them, so pretty much
Yeah, makes sense.
done.
So and tell us like
We've got a few other things.
in terms of company so in terms of people out there who might look at this and might want to engage, like who are the different groups you're looking to engage with over the next couple of months?
Well, that's a good question. In terms of investors, do you mean, or
Well,
otherwise?
yeah, are you hiring? Are you looking for customers? Are you looking for build relationships with investors? Yeah, like what's your focus in terms of running the business? And how can all the
Okay,
Australians
so
who watch this video help you?
yeah, right. Well, the customers are always good. We're certainly starting early discussions with a lot of people, and we can supply them with sort of lab scale volumes of product, and we can find out what their specs are, what they need in terms of their coke use. So, yep, we're talking to people all the time, and anyone who wants to get in contact with us, you can look on the website, no problem, or contact through
Yeah.
you. I think we're on your website too, aren't we? Anyway, on
Yeah,
the
exactly.
climate.
Definitely on Climate Salad. I'm sure you're getting lots of traffic.
In terms of investment, we're looking right now at how much we need for the next couple of years in terms of cash flow to really start to build the business and start getting some of those other projects off the ground. So we'll probably be tapping the market, in 6 months' time, something like that. We don't think we're going to need a lot of money. It's it's under 5 million. Let's say that. And then as we progress and we start building out these projects, we are going to want people to come in at that sort of project level and either take equity or help us with financing those projects. So um, now we're thinking we'll be packaging up nice little projects that people can chuck a bit of money at and earn a good solid return, and they can see from the past history of the plants that we've built that we've got customers. The physical process is well bedded down. There's no risk there.
Yep.
We're just, it's a sausage factory, and we'll get a pretty good return for making the sausages that we do.
Oh, fantastic. Look, I think there's a lot of things going in direction of favor of your growth of your business. Definitely, I think regulation's really biting. There's no doubt there's more and more customers and partners every day. And it's certainly from our work with you over the last few years, the product's got better and better and better. And I think we're getting close to that tipping point where it just makes absolute economic sense. And then the environment benefits as a consequence to that. Well, great work, John. Keep up the growth this year. Hopefully, you can keep kicking those goals and growing the business. Great to see another regional Australian business doing so well. And yeah, best of luck for 2025.